Good day and great health. My name is Dr. Jared Kosarka of Ohio Specific Chiropractic. I'm a pediatric, family wellness, and upper cervical specific chiropractor. Today on this video, I'm going to talk about ways you can go about lowering your immune system. As a chiropractor, I am more interested in ways to go about boosting your immune system, but maybe during these uncertain times, we need to maybe look at the opposite, I guess you could say. So we're going to kind of break down three major ways you can go about lowering your immune system. The first way is to live in constant fear. When we talk about fear, fear is a very potent or a very strong emotional stressor. Stress, no matter if it's physical, chemical, or emotional, if it comes in contact with our body, it's going to create inflammation. Now, anytime our body starts to create inflammation, it wants to combat that or reduce that inflammation. One way it does that is by producing cortisol. Now, the thing with the production of cortisol is that it should be only a short-term solution to reducing that inflammation. If we are finding ourselves constantly engaging a certain stressor, in this case fear, this means we are constantly producing that stress, which means we are going to be constantly producing inflammation, which means we're going to be constantly producing cortisol. Now the thing though is the prolonged production of cortisol has a lot of detrimental effects to our health, especially our immune system. The prolonged production of cortisol has been linked to actually the shrinking of the thymus gland, which is an important gland involved in our immune system. It has been also linked to the inhibition of immune proteins called interleukins and interferons. It can also disrupt an immune response called the cell-mediated immune response of our body. It has also been linked to the decreased production of lymphocytes, which are an important white blood cell in our immune system. Along with decreasing the production of those lymphocytes, prolonged cortisol has been also linked to decreasing the response of those lymphocytes to the presence of an infection. And then even a cherry on top of that is that prolonged cortisol has also been linked to the destruction or killing off of already existing lymphocytes that are circulating through the body. Along with these detrimental effects to our immune system, it also negatively affects other aspects of our health. When we do find ourselves in this constant production of cortisol, this means we are being constantly putting ourselves in that stressed state. That means we are finding ourselves engaging more of the sympathetic branch of our nerve system. Along with increasing that sympathetic branch, we're also going to be producing the hormones associated with that sympathetic branch. Now, both that production of the hormones and the engagement of the sympathetic branch of the prolonged production of the sympathetic branch has been also linked to suppressing our immune system and our immune function. It's also linked to the increase of cardiovascular damage. It's also linked to the increase of gastrointestinal distress. Some of the biggest examples being ulcers or irritable bowel syndrome or IBS. And it is also linked to a decrease in fertility, both in men and women. Second major way one can go about lowering your immune system and your function is to isolate yourself from society. This society can include your family, your friends, and your community at large. This is because as human beings, we are social creatures. It is really built into our blueprint. It's really built into our anatomy and physiology to be socially interacting with other humans. The more we start to decrease our social interactions, it starts to again lead to a cascading of ill effects. The more we decrease our social interactions, the more we'll start to increase disconnection. This will then lead to an increase in more isolation. This increase in isolation will lead and kind of fester into more distrust of our community and our society. This will lead to an increase in just overall dis-ease. Dis-ease is more similar to disorder or disharmony. This is really the precursor then. If we're having a disharmony with our society at large and within ourselves, this is a precursor to disease processes. The two major disease processes that can kind of express themselves through through chronic isolation is going to be anxiety and depression. Now, both anxiety and depression have been linked to a lot of also major ill effects of our health. The more we find ourselves in anxiety and depressed states, this is also very linked, strongly correlated to a suppression in our just overall immune function. It's going to increase the production of cortisol, which we know is a factor involved in the increase in inflammation. And also, too, it's going to increase cytokines, which is also a protein indicator of inflammation in our body. This is also when we find ourselves more anxious or depressed, we're going to decrease our antibody response. Antibodies are the cells of our body that are traveling through our system looking for different pathogens to help start the process of some specific immune response to kill off that pathogen. So if we're decreasing that antibody response, that means that then we're going to increase our potential rate of infection. And then also a kind of cherry on top of all this is the more you find yourself in a anxiety or depressed state, is you're going to start to deactivate natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are cells that our body makes that are designed to travel throughout our systems and to look for cancer cells and then destroy those cancer cells. Neurologically, if we are isolating ourselves more from society, our family, friends, community, we're going to decrease a major aspect of our nerve system called the polyvagal branch of our nerve system. Now, the polyvagal nerve branch is a secondary or is a branch of our parasympathetic nerve system. It's mostly going to be through the vagus nerve. Now, the polyvagal nerve interaction or engagement is going to stimulate, or it's going to be engaged when we find ourselves when we are socially interacting. We're going to initiate or engage or stimulate this polyvagal branch of our nerve system. So you can see it's really, again, it's built into our neurology, this ability to socially interact. It's really part of our anatomy and physiology blueprints. So the more we are decreasing this engagement or this stimulation of the polyvagal nerve system, we are going to then really increase the potential for different neurological delays and dysfunctions. And finally, the third way we can go about suppressing or lowering our immune system is to detach ourselves from our environment. You see, our environment is a reflection of us, and we are a reflection of our environment. The major way you can go about detaching yourself from your environment is to excessively sterilize your environment or yourself. Some examples of over or excessively sterilizing is to overly disinfect, overly sanitize, or to overly use antibiotics. I have to make a note that excessive sterilization is not the same thing as, it's not really synonymous with normal and healthy proactive hygienic practices. Things such as like washing your hands, making sure your house and your home are clean and tidy, making sure food and your water are not being cross-contaminated. These are normal and very proactive ways to be hygienic and healthy in your environment. That being said, those normal hygienic processes can be taken to the extreme. And that's where you'll start to see that you'll see this example through the excessive use of disinfectants and sanitizing or antibiotic use in our own body. The reason why this excessive sterilization will decrease or suppress our immune system is that this has been shown to decrease the microbiome diversity of our body. You see, what's the microbiome? The microbiome is the collection, or that's the aspect of our body that is the reflection of our environment. On our skin and in our body live thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of different viruses, bacteria, parasites, funguses that live in symbiotic relationship with us. Now, all those different viruses, bacteria, parasites that live in and on us are going to be really a reflection of the environment that we find ourselves in. Now, if you are overly, excessively sterilizing your environment, what's that going to do to your body? It's going to really sterilize your body, and it's going to decrease the diversity of your microbiome. The thing with the microbiome is that it has a strong connection to our immune system. The more we start to decrease the microbiome diversity of our body, the more ill effects it has on our immune system. Another ill effect of excessive sterilization or detaching ourselves from our environment completely is that we're going to be increasing the concentration of superbugs. Now, what are superbugs? For example, the advent or the origin of these superbug concentrations can come about from our overuse of over sanitizing or overusing antibiotics. A lot of different antibiotics or sanitizers, they might promote themselves as being able to kill off 99.99% of whatever that bacteria is. But if you, for example, you take an antibiotic and it only kills 99.99% of that bacteria, that 0.01% that survived has built up a resistance to that antibiotic. So then that resistant bacteria then has the ability to reproduce more and more and create a higher concentration of this superbug that has a resistance to whatever that antibiotic is. So the more we start to see this increase in superbug concentrations in different environments, you're going to start to see a higher rate of increase in infections. Also, too, neurologically, if we find that we are constantly needing to detach ourselves from our environment, this means we are finding ourselves at constant odds with our environment. This means we're going to find ourselves neurologically in a constant survival mode. Again, if we're more in survival mode, we're engaging more of our sympathetic nervous system, which means we're sort of forcing ourselves in this survival setting, this survival state. When we are living in this survival mode, we can't be proactive with our health. We really can't. If you're constantly being in survival mode, you're constantly going to be reactive. The more we find ourselves in that survival mode, the less ability we have to thrive, the less ability we have to grow. And these are very important characteristics of our health. It's very important for our health, not just our health, but our life in general is the ability or the potential to thrive and grow. If we're not growing, we're going to find ourselves stagnant, and really we're going to start to regress instead of have the ability to grow. Now, there are a lot of different causes or kind of correlations to what's at the root of these ways to go about lowering your immune system. One major root cause I do feel is at the root of finding yourself living in constant fear, isolating yourself from society, and wanting to detach from your environment, as you have this sense of loss of control in your life. So I think that's really one major cause of why certain times people feel the want really to sort of live these kind of reactive practices in their lives. I think it's very important, though, to realize that when it comes to not just our health but our life overall, we have more control sometimes than we give ourselves credit for, or that we realize. With our health and our life and our society and the actions that we do in our lives, we have more control than sometimes we realize. So I think really a major way we can be proactive or to combat these negative aspects of ways to suppress our health is to come to that realization that we do have more control than we give ourselves credit for. Just a simple kind of one primer into ways you can go about suppressing your immune system if you so choose. But if you have any questions about these or concerns about ways, if you're more interested in ways to go about boosting your immune system or helping provide a better outlook to your just health overall, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at ohiospecific.com. Thank you very much.